An example of being ready for the moment, I think, is in my meetup with Chris Sacca. Chris Sacca is another billionaire investor. He has been on Shark Tank before as a guest investor, and he is well known for being one of the first investors in Twitter and Uber, and has made multiple billions and multiple X return on investment. And I think it was 2015. I had a little traction with the fund. I had a couple of investors. I was on my way. I definitely identified companies I was going to invest in, set up shop. And I had read and listened to a lot of his interviews, and I knew that I wanted to talk to him. So I went to an event where he was speaking. He was a headline speaker at the keynote. And I think I was the only Black person there who was in the audience, who wasn't working at this event. And so I already kind of knew the situation. He gave a great talk, and this would have been a few years ago, so there were fewer people in tech who were out there who looked like me. And I knew that I needed to have a few minutes with him for him to understand what I was doing. So right before he finished talking, I went over to someone who was working. It was a Black woman who was working at the event, and I think she was serving things. And I went over to her, asked her how she was doing, and everybody was paying attention to Chris. And I said to her, "You see that guy on stage? I need to talk to him." She didn't ask me why. She didn't ask who I was. She said, "Okay, I got you." She said, "Actually, a little bit after this, right after he leaves the stage, I know that he is supposed to be upstairs to do an interview because I've been told to help with that. So the only way to get upstairs without taking the main stairs that everybody else will have access to is the elevator behind us." So I could still feel myself in that moment, because what she did was she looked behind her, and this was like a staff elevator. She put her hand, without looking, next to the button. She pressed the up button, and she looked at me as if to say, "It's all yours." I backed into the elevator doors closed, and I went upstairs. And when Chris Sacca was upstairs for 20 or so minutes getting his makeup done for this interview, I was standing in the doorway, and he had only me to talk to. So I introduced myself as someone he had talked to a couple of times online, and I went on to tell him what I was building and why he should be part of it. Now, I was prepared. I was flexible, because I knew that if he said to me, "I don't want to have this conversation," I would have left and understood his intentions and agenda and left it at that. And I knew my numbers, and I knew what I was talking about. And by the end of this conversation, Chris said to me, "I hear what you're saying. I believe it should exist. I understand what you're trying to do, but why don't you go and work for somebody else's fund? Why are you trying to start this by yourself?" And I looked at him and I said, because I had researched him and I knew his agenda and his incentives, I said, "Chris, you never started working at a fund. You did it all yourself. So why shouldn't I be able to?" And he said, "Call me in the morning." He gave me his contact information, and I watched him walk off into the sunset with a co-founder of Twitter, and they were going off to dinner. And there were several people who were trying to talk to Chris, but I had that inside track for that moment. He went on to invest in every single fund that I've had, and he and his wife, Crystal, are still friends and supporters to this day.